Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 40. In this video, we got to talk about partial payments on an invoice with a cash discount applied. That means we have a bill of $125. The terms are 3% discount if we pay within 10 days. And if we pay $50, not the whole amount, $50 we pay within that 10-day window, we cannot take the $50, subtract it from the 125 to get the remaining balance. We actually have to do a special calculation when we apply $50 that gets the cash discount and credit the account $51.55. Now, this calculation is not hard. Because guess what? We get to use what we learned from video number 38 about cash discounts and video 23 where we learned about increase and decrease problems. Now let's go over to the sheet partial payment and look at our first example. Partial payment on invoice with cash discount applied, example number 1. Total invoice, $125. The terms are 3/10 net 40. And the invoice date is 3/8/2018. Partial payment is $50, and that is made on 3/17/2018. And the question is, how much should the account be credited? Well, let's enter our numbers. 125, enter. The terms are 3% discount if paid within 10 days. Otherwise, the total amount is due within 40 days without avoiding a penalty. Invoice date 3/8/2018, and we paid it on 3/17/2018. Partial payment made before the discount date. We didn't pay the whole amount. We only paid $50. Cash discount. There it is right there. I'm going to enter it as a decimal, 0.03. Number of days to take the discount, that's the 10. Now, I'm going to calculate this to make sure that Excel tells me true or false. So I first want to calculate days between date paid and invoice date. Hopefully, it's less than 10. So we do date math. There's the invoice pay date minus the invoice date. Remember, it's always later date minus earlier date. And when I hit enter, yes, indeed, we get the discount. 9 days it took us to pay. Now, I'm going to do a formula, and I'm going to ask the question, hey, number of days it took us to pay, are you less than or equal to the number of days they gave us to take the discount? Enter. Uh-oh, what's the partial payment? Now, before we solve this with an increase-decrease problem, let's just think about common sense and how we could answer the question, how much should the account be credited for? First, think about how much you would have to pay if you owe just $1 and you were given a 3% discount. You would not have to pay the whole $1. You would have to pay 1 minus 3 pennies, so you would only have to pay 97 pennies. So the idea is you owed $1, you paid within the discount period, so you only paid 97 pennies. When you paid 97 pennies, they wiped away your $1 debt. This means for every $1 in the account balance, you only need to pay 97 pennies. So if someone pays $50, you cannot just take the $50 off the account. You must take $1 off that $50 for every 97 cents that you paid. Well, how in the world do we do that? Well, we ask the question, how many 97s are in 50? And of course, dividing 50 by 97 tells us how many 97s are in 50. So this is the calculation. This is how we credit the account. We take 50 divided by 1 minus 3 pennies, which gives us 50 divided by 97, and we get $51.55. So the partial payment, and of course, we have to use round. We're dealing with money. We're going to use this in a subsequent calculation. And we have the potential of extraneous decimals. I'm taking the $50, and I'm going to divide it by 1 minus the discount. close parentheses. Internally, that gives us the calculation, but we need to round it to the penny and enter. There it is, 51.55. Now, to get the remaining balance, I say, hey, there's the whole 125 minus. Notice the business has to subtract 51.55 even though they were only given 50 bucks, and enter. Now, let's look at this from a slightly different point of view. If you remember from video number 23, we have a begin amount. And if it's a decrease problem, which it is, we're going to start with the full credited amount and go down based on some rate of change, which is minus 3%, down to the end part, which is our 50. Now, it is the begin that we don't know, so I'm going to question mark that. The end part we know. We know we went from some bigger credit amount down to the amount we paid. So I'm going to say equals and get the 50 bucks from right over there. Now, in a decrease problem, the begin amount is always 100%. And the rate of change is going to be negative. Now, we already have our rate of change, 3% or 3 pennies for every dollar. So watch this. I'm not even going to type an equal sign to do a formula. I'm going to type minus. And I'm going to click on the 0.03. Now, when I hit enter, that gives me minus 3%. Now, I want you to notice something. If I click in the cell and look up in the formula bar, anytime you type a minus or a plus as the first character in the cell, it'll automatically put the equal sign in for you. That was also pre-formatted. Now, rate, that's 1 plus the rate of change. And what does rate mean? That means the amount you multiply by the begin to get the end. A 100% or 1 plus the rate of change. And when I hit enter, there's the 97 pennies for every $1. Now we want to remind ourselves, what was our awesome trick? Anytime we have a begin amount and associated part and associated rate, remember, we have a change part, that's the amount it goes down, the rate of change, that's the percentage change downward. Then we have a second part, the end part and the rate. That's what it means by associated part and associated rate. So since we have end part and rate, those are associated with each other. So when I take the hand, remember how this diagram works? We cover up what we're trying to solve with, and there's the formula. Part divided by rate. Associated part divided by associated rate. So right up here, equal sign, associated part divided by associated rate. And when I hit enter, that is another way to solve and another way to think about how to solve this problem. Now, with that in mind, of course, we have a check amount. Anytime we calculate that 75.43 and the 51.55, I'm going to check by taking partial payment, and I'm going to multiply it by the rate. In parentheses, 1 minus. I had to type the minus here. Over here, we didn't because we entered it as a negative. But there it is, 1 minus that. That's the complement rule we learned from video 38. Close parentheses and enter. And sure enough, I get 50. All right, let's look at our second example for partial payment on invoice with cash discount applied. They gave us a 2% discount. The invoice total was this, but we couldn't make the whole payment. So we only paid 900 bucks. So when we send this in, they better not just credit our account for 900. It better be more than 500. Remember, 2% means for every $1 in that amount, we only have to pay 98 pennies. So how do we do that? We need to bump this 900 up to something bigger than 900. So I take equals the amount we paid divided by 1 minus the cash discount. That 1 minus will give us 98. Notice anytime we divide some number by a number smaller than 1, that's 0.98. It'll always result in a bigger number than the numerator. So when I close parentheses and enter, there's the amount we get credited. I'm absolutely happy to take $18.37 as a cash discount. Now, I actually forgot to round. I'm going to hit F2, and after the equal sign, I'm going to type round. And after the calculation, comma 2, close parentheses. We do run the risk of extraneous decimals if that percentage cash discount changes. We're doing money, and I'm going to use it in a subsequent calculation. The amount that's still owed equals, there's the full amount, minus the amount that was credited to our account, and enter. So we got credited $918.37, and we still owe $934.38. All right, in this video, we very importantly saw how to take what we learned in video 38 about cash discounts, and if we make a partial payment, apply the concepts from increase, decrease, or just straight logic, right? We got 3% discount, so when we send in 50 bucks, actually every 97 cents in that 50 bucks got us $1 taken off our bill. All right, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from excelisfun, including next video and video 41, where we'll talk about markup on cost and markup on sell price. All right, we'll see you next video.